Now, the rest of the story. One by one, the young students of Exeter Academy were called to stand and recite, and one by one they did, except one. 14-year-old boy named Danny, a new arrival at Exeter, and still he knew all about the school requirement of periodic declamations before the student body. He was quite prepared for his own. In fact, he had rehearsed for hours, and yet when Danny's name was called, he could not even get out of his chair. And when one of the instructors asked why he was not standing, Danny could not even speak. Tongue-tied, terrified, he just sat there with the futile urgings of his teachers echoing in his ears. Later, alone in his room, he just cried. Well, let's get to know this young man a little better. Danny was a country boy. No problem in itself, except that he just plain looked like a country boy. His classmates were always teasing him about his rural demeanor, about his backwoods appearance. His farmer daddy had sacrificed so that his son could attend the prestigious Exeter Academy. At first, Danny was thrilled by the opportunity, but now he wished that he had not left the farm. Everywhere he looked, he was reminded of what he was not. The other boys at Exeter were so refined in the way they acted and in the way they dressed. They seemed so brilliant. But now the truth was that young Danny could hold his own academically. His self-consciousness got the better of him only when it came to public speaking. Time and time again he would be called on to recite and could not. Sometimes teachers frowned. Other times they just smiled. They knew Danny had conscientiously memorized and rehearsed. And still, when it came his turn, he could only sit there, sweating, bug-eyed, and that night he would usually cry himself to sleep. And then at the end of one term, Danny's teacher, Mr. Emery, stood before the class to announce individual grades. Quarter summation, it was called. So-and-so had made progress through the term, so-and-so had not. Finally, Mr. Emery came to Danny. Danny was to gather up his books, was to take his cap down from the peg, and leave the classroom, never to return. Well, somehow the country boy just knew that he had been expelled. What teacher could tolerate such a tongue-tied pupil? Seeing the despondent expression on the boy's face, Mr. Emery quickly added, Danny was not being expelled. He was being promoted to the highest class in the academy. Of course, Danny couldn't believe it at first, but in the joy of the moment, he resolved that he would prove himself worthy of that promotion. He would not let Mr. Emery down, and he did not. In fact, Mr. Emery would remain a close friend for the rest of Danny's life. And often they recalled the day a certain young farm boy shook the stigma of his backwoods background, soon to untie his tongue, eventually to be hailed as America's greatest ever orator, the man whose stunning speeches inspired the legend that he could talk the devil himself out of a soul. So, you've just seen what a little confidence could do for a taciturn country boy named Daniel Webster. Only now you know the rest of the story.